Hey guys, what's up? This is Falsebooles123, and this is day 20 of our quarantine vlog, which just completely astounds me. I think yesterday I was definitely a little bit burnt out just on everything. I've been consuming a lot of media recently because there's a lot of stuff I want to pop out for, my blogs, my other stuff. And sometimes I feel that maybe I'm not always, producing it as efficiently as I can be. But I just decided to give myself a little bit of a break, and I mostly just watched Netflix and played Minecraft for 5 hours, and honestly, that was the refreshment that I needed. I'm still looking for ways that I can be more productive in this time, to be more just less sleep all day and then stay up all night type business hands. I don't even know what that word was. Business-like, but it's a process, and I figure it's just kind of a bit of free time for myself. It's a period of growth. It's a period of relaxation, especially since I'm usually very much constantly going, constantly trying to, just be a better person. And I get that, I tend to be very high strung, so I think that it's good that I do have this period of time that I can relax. That by which I say I take on much more than I can chew and do way too much, so what else is new in my life? So now that we got that useless preamble out of the way, because I want to update you on my life. I don't know if you guys care, but this is a daily vlog, so if there's not a diary aspect of it, what the fucking point is it, So this episode, getting onto the meat, we are doing another Falsebooles123 music quarter. Yay! And with this week's video, which I don't know when it will be up, I'm going to be filming it, let's see, on Friday. It's Wednesday right now, so I guess I have plenty of time for the week. Anyway, that video that's coming up is going to be about it's going to be one of my first D&D videos. I'm a big fan of Matthew Colville. I'm a big fan of, I'm trying to think of any other D&D, YouTube account I follow. I guess Puffin Forest. I like his stuff. It's more comedic than, I guess, factual, but I love a good story. And I like, the stories he tells. Anyway, getting off point. That's going to be my first D&D video where I talk about the history of my world. And it's just a basic, simple cosmology. Or I guess, world history, whatever you want to call it. So I thought for this music corner, just to theme it a little, I'm going to be talking about a few of the albums that I chose for my first module, the one that I've actually finished. Because I'm working on 2 at the moment, and I finished 1, which I'm just starting, creating this campaign. And so I'm still getting used to, the production schedule and making things. And if we're being honest, I definitely haven't, I don't feel like I've made enough, but I also know that I have at least 2 months of content already created before I even have to, have anything, else written up. So even when I begin the campaign, I will still have plenty of time to create more content. Anyway, so first up, I'm trying to think about what would be the best way to do this. I think that I'm going to just tell you a few about the albums that I chose for each of the dungeons, and then I'll play, my actual original song last at the end. That way you have something to hold out for. Anyway, guys, so the way that I created my first module is that it's essentially a investigatory sort of setup. You are in this town which is run by this cult, and you basically want to find out what the big mystery is, where all these people are going, and find your friend. And so because of that, I want to create sort of optional content. So I made it where there are several dungeons throughout the game. So there's 2 which are completely optional, and there is 1 which it's not. And I'm not going to get into too much detail about the not optional one because that's spoilers. And if any of my D&D friends are watching this, I don't want to spoil it for them. So the first one I believe was called, because you have them all cutesy names. It's called the Forgotten Temple. That's such a great name. And basically in that one, you find yourself underground in this temple that had been basically buried in a landslide. So it's completely underground. And so you're wandering around this completely sealed temple. and all this stuff is happening. And like, you're being attacked by like skeletons and zombies and standard D&D fare. And I'm very big on narrative storytelling and environmental storytelling. Took me a second. So like Fallout is like my biggest aesthetic, basically. And so all of my dungeons, I want to create a story that allowed me to tell the story I wanted while also providing gameplay. And that is definitely the way that I like to make games. I'm the type of person where I'm a storyteller first and a game designer second. And obviously that does have some flaws to it, but I also try to make it balanced because, game design is another big interest of mine. Now, in the first dungeon, the Forgotten Temple, I was looking for something that was a bit more instrumental, a little bit more dark and eerie, because you're walking around all of these sort of like, creepy, like dark, like, rooms. Because there's no light in a temple that's been buried for like 600 years. And so I was stumbling along on the internet and I found a band called Apocalyptica, which is really fun to say. And Apocalyptica is this Finnish, I believe it was called a neoclassical metal band. And basically what that means is that they're like metal, but what they do that's cool is that they use cellos. It actually started out as, if I remember correctly, a Metallica tribute band. So they play like a bunch of like Metallica songs, which I mean, everyone loves Metallica. But then they started like diving into their own stuff. I first found them when I found a live concert clip of them playing Hall of the Mountain King on cellos, but it was mellow, but it was metal, and it was fucking bitchin', and I'm just like, who are these beautiful, beautiful boys making that beautiful, beautiful music? And so I started listening to them, and I'm not the biggest metal fan, I'm not the biggest metalhead, but I definitely like them, and I mean, obviously I listen to other metal besides Apocalyptica. I could throw out some names, but I don't feel like justifying myself. So Apocalyptica style is, a lot of it is, at least most of the music that I had on the, in the module, is mostly the instrumental works. They have a lot of just really intense cello, and it provides this very interesting sound with the metal. It's, because the cello does have a similar sound to the guitar as the bowstring instruments, but it also has the sort of more fuller, flatter tones in it, just because of the way that the strings are, I guess, bowed rather than actually plucked or strummed. And so you definitely get a different sort of sonic sound with that, sonic texture with that. And the instrumentals are very layered, they're very dramatic, and they just provide really lovely background music that's sinister while also being very intriguing. And I just really loved how the sound sounded, especially, like, with the context of where I was playing it. So Apocalyptica is probably just a really great band. Like, they have some really great stuff, and I also think it just was really good for the type of thing I was using it for, gameplay. I actually used 2 of the albums in the module. I used them in the Forgotten Temple, which was the Worlds Collide album, which I loved. My favorite song from that is I'm Not Jesus, which is one of the few songs in that album that actually has vocals. Most of the songs in that album are instrumental. And the second album was Cult, which I mostly just used for the name, because the whole, like, storyline is about, like, a cult, and I'm thinking, I do love, like, cutesy names like that. And the module that I originally always see module is the official name of it. It's actually probably one of the more, cohesive, storylines I've had, just because I spent so much time workshopping it. So literally every single detail has a lot of, I'll say, jokes to it. There's a lot of naming conventions that I use. There's a lot of hints and pokes, like a lot of the subject matters. And this is the only spoiler I'm going to give about it. But basically, I named all of my NPCs after Baptists. And I'm not going to explain why. I'm just going to say that was a purposeful naming convention that I had for, very exact reason, because there was supposed to be a lot of little hints, a lot of little secrets, even with, meta things like people's names or locations or even the names of the albums or music. So the second dungeon they had, so the first one was this Forgotten Temple. It was deep underground. There's just rubble and skeletons and all sorts of creepy stuff like that. The second one is actually a open air dungeon, which I loved. Because I wanted to be a bit more innovative with the idea of dungeons. You know, a lot of people criticize Dungeons & Dragons for, stepping away from the titular concepts. That you might not always have dungeons, that you might not always have dragons in it. But I definitely love the idea of dungeons because it's a closed... Because a dungeon can basically be anything. A dungeon simply has to be a location where you can adventure and do things. But obviously there's also modules which are roleplay heavy, or there's modules where, it's more of a battle royale or a fight, more fighting and things like that. Let's see, I'm trying to think of a way to sort of explain the concept better. Okay, here's one. So, if you listen to The Adventure Zone by the McElroy brothers, there was the Crystal Kingdom, which you can consider to be a fairly succinct dungeon. You have different rooms, and you have different encounters in each of the different rooms you go to. But then you'll have other modules in that series, such as... Oh, dang it, I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I'll edit the actual words in. There's the one at the beginning which deals with these races and this town and bank robbers and stuff. And then there is another one later on which deals with basically this Groundhog's Day storyline in a western town. And spoilers if you have not seen that, but do listen to The Adventure Zone. It's a great podcast. Anyway, back to the point, is that basically there can be modules with dungeons and modules without dungeons. But I wanted to make a dungeon which was a bit more abstract, rather. And so, the dungeon is basically an entire city that is in ruins. And so you climb up this mountain, you get to the summit, and you see this entire summit that's just decimated. This entire city that's just ruins and decay. And it's not flat, but it should be. So very So if you think about sort of the ruin porn of Last of Us or Fallout, that's sort of the idea that I kind of had for it, but definitely more fantasy. And at the end of the city, at the end of this just ruins, is this giant ziggurat that towers over the town. Obviously, when the town was not in ruins, it would have been pretty normally sized. But because everything's flat, the tower trim the bushes, makes the tree grow taller. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so as they're looking over this town, and all this ash and cinder just flows through the air in this miasma, the first lines of Eliza Rickman's O Ye Sinners album plays. And if you don't know who Eliza Rickman is, you've probably not listened to Welcome to Night Vale, because I basically just ripped off a bunch of bands from the weather playlist for this first module. Side note, I also included Dengue Fever. It's this Cambodian psychedelic rock band that was also used in Welcome to Night Vale for one of the fight scenes, but that's getting off topic. Anyway, Eliza Rickman is, best way to describe it, indie or baroque pop, and think less Florence and the Machines and more like Nico, maybe, if that is a decent comparison. So, or even Cake Baked Betty. And so a lot of her music is very lilting, it's very melodic. It has definitely a lot of orchestrations in the background. You'll hear the, Glauberspiel, I believe it's called. And other percussion and violins and other orchestration, which really help, act as the harmony for her singing. And so she has a lot of very abstract lyrics, but they're also just it's very beautiful and serene, but also very somber sounding music. And so I'm just trying to think of a few bars that can actually sing to you so you can get a sense of a thing. I got it. Hook, line, and sinker rolling down to the bottom. Butterfly floats like a saw to the top. Kill for the thrill, cut 'em sticking if you got 'em. Circle rolling under, rolling red to the stump. But where's your mother? Fall down dead, dirty mind, dirty voice, pretty little hand. Wish you were here and wish you make my bed. Dirty mind, dirty voice, pretty little head. And that that was Pretty Little Head. I don't believe it's on that album. I think it's on a separate album. But probably one of my favorites, and that was actually the one they played on Welcome to Night Vale. So Eliza Rickman just has this great sound to her, this just great atmosphere to her work. And I just felt like it was just the perfect, depiction for the ruins. Because it was melodic, it was melancholic, and it had this sense of wonder and awe while still being just really creepy in the setting. So I actually created two works for the module, something that I have not replicated in any of my other modules, though obviously in the future as I rewrite and as I refine my series, I definitely want to include more original work like the things I am mentioning here. So one of them was an original song, which I'm going to be playing for you in a little bit, and the other was, interestingly enough, a voice acting segment. I had a monster that I wanted to have multiple voices with that were all sort of speaking in unison. And obviously, I am not demonically possessed, so I can't do that. However, I do have this magical technology called a voice recorder, and that allows me to, whip it up together. I had originally wanted to do it on, my Blue Yeti microphone, which, if you follow my Instagram stories, you might know I use for streaming. It is... Oh, that was noisy. This little bad boy right here. But the voice acting segment I actually did with just my regular phone. However, it did sound better than my first attempt at creating it. Sorry, I spilled something, so... Hello, welcome to Falsebooles123 being unprofessional. Anyway, my second one, which is now what we're going to get into, was I actually created an original song that is about, the story. So the first segment, the beginning of our module, we begin, of course, in a tavern because I'm an unoriginal hack. That being said, I love the idea of a tavern. It's quick, it's easy, and I try to, actually do something interesting with it. So the beginning of the module starts with, basically, in my D&D world, adventuring parties are a bureaucratic entity. They are essentially a hodgepodge group of people that are contractually obligated to work with each other and to go on quests for money. I don't know why I put quests about money, but money. And so to do that, you essentially needed a case manager. A manager, which is RJ Toddy, which is sort of my self-insert, but also my PC from my last D&D game. I actually have written all of my PCs into this setting because it's kind of like where I imagine my PCs to have come from, So RJ Toddy essentially gets kidnapped by this church, which is secretly a cult, which has been kidnapping people, and you just didn't know about it because, you're new to town. And so your thing is that you don't know jack shit about, this place. All you know is that they popped off somewhere. And you want to find your friend because not only does he have all your money, but you can't really adventure without him. And that took me a long time to actually think of sort of a justification of why you have to go after him. But I honestly just thought, the players would be totally okay with, the premise. And so you're asking around, and so I kind of, set it up. I give you a little bit of narration, I give you a little bit of, world building, and then I'm just the scene opens up, it goes into widescreen, your character can move around, and I'm like... Okay, you need to know about this, cult. Go talk to people. This is a tavern. Buy someone a drink, there's a role-playing segment. And so I wanted the original module to be essentially sort of a guide for new players, because when I had written it, I had several new players that had not played D&D before. So I wanted to create a first session that was able to sort of be a tutorial. And this is what the tavern scene really works as. You get a chance to actually roleplay and talk to people, which gives you that element. But then you also have a few skill checks that you have to make, which allow you to actually get the hand of rolling dice and understanding how skill checks work and that type of thing. Let's see, I include, one NPC challenges you to a drinking contest, and therefore you must roll a constitution check. Another... I believe I'm using the wrong phrase, but just roast me in the comments. Another one challenges to a game of darts, which is dexterity, so on and so forth. One of the characters, which I've actually rewritten to include some of my PC lore, is a bard named Terry Arbity. So Terry Arbity, that was not the bard's original name, is actually the half-brother or stepbrother, I can't quite remember off the top of my head. I don't even know my lore that good enough, apparently, of my PC from my last D&D group, who was named was Tig Albany, and she's like this just bard who's also a burlesque dancer, and you don't even meet her until like further into the game. Anyway, and I have like a whole section set up for that, but I'm getting off topic. Basically, you speak to Terry, and he's like, yeah, I'm like, know a song about this because I'm a bard. Like, I know all of this like oral history about things because I'm a bard and I'm trained traditionally. And so he starts busting out this song, which is, I actually played on my ukulele. It was originally sung because when I wrote the song, I had not I had not picked up the ukulele. But when I was finishing up the module, I came back to it, I actually figured out, like, I composed it. And so I'm actually going to, like, shut up now and just sort of, like, take you back into that scene. Albany's like, yeah, so I've heard about the cult, like, and I have a song. You want to hear it? I'm getting paid by this tavern to play music, and that's what I do. And so this is actually available on my Bandcamp as soon as my laptop wakes up, because apparently it fell asleep while I was talking, like most people, And hopefully, if I can actually manage to get this done, we can listen to some dulcet tones from a couple months ago. Because I wrote this when, sometime last year. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. I recorded this sometime last year. I wrote the actual lyrics, like, when I was, like, freshman in college. So this is called Church of Permantheroth, and like I said before, you can check it out on my Bandcamp. So that song was definitely in a lot of production, and I actually really love the just final product of it. It made me really excited and proud just to produce something like that my players could actually listen to and just have this really immersive, um, I guess, introduction to the world. And it was just something that, I created as a whim, but I worked really hard to produce it. And so I think that's really fun because there's a lot of music that I love listening to, but it's also great to make your own music and to produce something which is unique and inspired and just really fun. And I actually really love, taking up the ukulele. It was something that, had just been sort of a hole in my life. Not having just the ability to play music. Like, not play music like on the radio, but play music. Because I had been, a musician. A musician. Yeah, I was a musician in high school. I was in band in high school, which technically the first way I said it is not incorrect, but connotations. Because I've been playing an instrument since I was, in elementary school by that point. I had loved music class. And music had been, a part of my life. Playing music, listening to music, and just all that. I don't think I really developed my own musical taste until I was, out of high school and in my 20s. Which I'm barely in my 20s now, but you know what I mean. But I also think that, I loved playing music. It was something that was always very enjoyable in my life. And so being able to create things, whether it's for YouTube or for my D&D, has really made me happy. Anyway, guys, this video has gone on for probably way too long, like all my other ones. But I had a lot of really fun bringing it to you today. It was probably a little bit less structured than probably the rest of the videos that I've had this week. But it was just something sort of spur of the moment and just enjoyable that I could talk about some of the music decisions that I made while actually creating my D&D game. Well, campaign. I would love to do segments like this in the future where I do discuss the sort of the musical breakdown of some of my other modules, which luckily enough are much more, I'm going to say, fleshed out and cohesive than All Is He was. In All Is He, I was really just picking music kind of as I came across it, that sounded good, that sort of fit the situation. But there wasn't a lot of overall cohesion between the music. If you listen to the links I'll provide, Eliza Rickman does not sound like Apocalyptica, which does not sound like Angry Fever, which doesn't sound like, most of the Charming Disaster, singles that I use for the boss battles. However, if in the future, if I talk about my Tribidus or my Force of the Kingfisher modules, you'll definitely notice there was not only a lot more music in it, but a lot more of genre cohesion between it. Just for a small little teaser, All Is He has about, I'm going to say, 7 or 8 bands in it from, a variety of different genres. Let's see. I'm going to say that I'm trying to do the quick mental math on this. Yeah. I'm going to say that Tribidus has around 26 bands, and that includes the main music along with just the ending bands and the travel music in the first act. And I'm going to say that, let's see, because I'm counting this up in my head right now. Force of the Kingfisher has, I'm going to estimate around 16. Actually, no, probably 18. Because it has 12 main artists, then 3, let's see, other styles, 3 other genres for overworld music, and then there is 2 from the initial first act of the module, which are different. Generally, how I like to, and this is getting a little off topic, but we're going to be wrapping this up soon. Generally, for modules, I like to have a first act which sort of introduces, not necessarily introduces the main plot, but sort of gets you into sort of the aesthetic and feel of the module. And by the end of the first act, you have something which causes you not able to go back from it. Generally, if you watched Saw 2, there's the scene where this woman is putting her hand up for this I don't know, opening, and then it gets stuck and she can't take her hand out. And that's basically, it's that raccoon monkey paw type thing where you can't get your hand out of the jar. In my modules. You go in, you're like, this is cool. And then you're ready to like nope the fuck out, but you can't. And I'm just like, tee-hee ta-ha, there you go, bitches. Time to get jiggy with it. And that's just like how I like to write them, because I want to have not only a motivation, but a reason to finish the storyline that allows you to progress. And I might not always do that with, like, all of my modules, but definitely the next 3 that I'm writing have that component to it. And that's just all funs and gamesies. Now, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really wanted to chat about my modules, and, I think I'm good. Like I said, not as well structured as my previous weeks, but, what can I do? I'm always striving to better it, and sometimes you get a few videos that aren't as top-notch quality. That being said, guys, I'm definitely trying to work on just these daily vlogs, sort of getting to the style of them, because they are different from the weekly vlogs that I make. And so it's definitely a learning curve, and it's just something new to experiment with my channel. Let me know, what sort of vlogs you like to see from me, what are your favorite videos that you watch, and especially if you like any of the music I mentioned in this video. Let's see, tomorrow I'm actually going to be doing a little bit different on the entertainment side of things, and I want to talk about a game developer that I've been following recently due to my blog. I've been playing this game for this month just because I wanted to get pretty far in it by the time I described it in my Boolean blog. And I just thought it might be fun to talk about sort of the games and just the genre that it's in general. Anyway, guys, I'm going to pop off. I got shit to do today, and I got shit to do tomorrow. And that's just my life. So if you want to see more of me besides these vlogs, which will probably pop up days after I've made them, check me out on YouTube. If you want to see any of the stuff I write on the Boolean blog, I have reviews on movies, I have reviews on podcasts, and TV shows, and video games. And if you're interested in cooking, if you like food, which who doesn't, let's be honest, I do publish some recipes on my RJ's Diner blog. These are all places that I update. I try to keep an update schedule for them. During the quarantine, I'm kind of in this production frenzy just because what else am I going to do with my life? You know. But anyway, guys, I had a lot of fun today, and I hope you did too. This is going to be Falsebooles123 signing off.